have three great companies on our panel today. We have 24/7, Smart Action, and AVOKE Analytics. And at the end of this presentation, each of these presenters is going to have 15 minutes to give you some of their best ideas. A survey will pop up. So we always appreciate when you do respond to that survey. In the survey, you'll see the names of those three companies. And let us know which ones of those you thought did a great job. It could be all of them, which we absolutely expect to happen. And tell us what you liked best about these presentations. So now what I'd like to do is introduce your first presenter, Tom Lewis, CEO of Smart Action. Tom has over 25 years of experience focused primarily on customer experience and contact center operations and technology. He has this wide knowledge base, including telephony technology, operational efficiency, outsourcing, and overall customer service strategy. Before Smart Action, Tom was a partner at Deloitte Consulting and the national leader of its call center advisory practice. Tom?
Thanks so much, Sherry. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. And hopefully you are able to see the slides turning, and it's on my profile. But let's go into, right off the top, talking about some of the challenges and priorities that are in the call center. Now, what you're going to hear from all three speakers today are a lot of best practices around IVR, but understanding that in the call center there are a lot of competing priorities. And so, frankly, one of the best practices is to try to figure out how to get IVR to the top of the priority list. And the reason for that is because, as one of the analysts we like to work with said to me once, you're only as good as your weakest channel. And today, voice is still a very strong channel. The phone channel is very strong. But the challenges that hit the call center are, as identified in this survey from Pipeline, and that's in January. So if you want to go look at the full report on that, that's where this information is coming from. But call center managers talk about high attrition and collaboration. And third on the list has to do with self-service. First among them is IVR. And other items that, frankly, relate to call center operations. But what's interesting about this, and the reason I brought it up first, is just sort of provoke you to think about, in spite of the fact that that's what the call center says these are the challenges, the priorities inside the organization don't necessarily align to that. I found that part of the survey fascinating. And as I alluded to earlier, it's because IVR often isn't the number one thing on people's plate. So what is it that is driving that, and the fact that voice may, in fact, be your most prevalent but weakest channel? What's interesting in the call center space is that people have an opportunity to provide or to get their own support via web or smartphone or what have you. And so they tend to do a lot of research themselves. When they do this research and they don't find the answers they're looking for, they land in the call center and they end up like this guy. Very frustrated, and in fact, expecting the call center agent to have a level of experience and knowledge, or information rather, that is consistent with what they already found on the web. And so when they talk to a call center agent and the agent doesn't even know the basics of what they just found in the research, tends to be an issue because the caller is very frustrated at that point. So providing information both to the call center agents and to inside your IVR that's consistent with what's on the web and follows through on it. But keep in mind that phone self-service, or just because somebody uses the phone, doesn't mean that they don't want to do self-service. In fact, several sources for the data associated with this slide, but the idea is simply this. A lot of people, over half the people, start online or other sources. In fact, that sort of tells you that more than half of the people would prefer not to even pick up the phone, which frankly is fine. About a third use the phone and other, in-person or other kind of methods. But if they start online, and this is where if you follow this thing sort of down to the bottom grayer area, they're looking at FAQs, they're doing live chat, email, et cetera. But about half of those still end up looking for additional support. And for the most part, 68% of them pick up the phone. Again, it doesn't mean that they don't want self-service. It means that they haven't found the solution or the information that they're looking for elsewhere, and so they've chosen the voice channel. Now, can the voice channel provide them information with something besides a live agent? Sure, it can. So let's get into a couple of best practices and things that you can do to greet your caller from an IVR perspective so that it doesn't even land inside the call center, recognizing that, as I just mentioned, a bunch of calls still do, even if you have great web presence and these other tools. For those of you who don't know Smart Action, we are an artificial intelligence-based voice self-service platform. That's about all I'll say about Smart Action. But the idea is that if you have artificial intelligence and machine learning and a dynamic environment that allows for the system to interface or to interact with the customer in an intelligent way, the chances of them continuing on inside the system is much greater. One of the things that we did recently is we did a focus group at one of our clients, which is a health plan. We brought the supervisors into a room, and I said, so what if I told you Bob Smith is going to call in an hour from now? And I'll give you the hour, 20 of you, go find out why you think he's going to call. What is the probability that you'd guess that correctly by looking at his account, looking at his history, all these kind of things? And then when Bob calls, are you able to say, Bob, thanks for calling. Are you calling about that claim that was only partially paid last Tuesday or something like that? The idea that the system knows who they are and the context of them is very powerful. Now, the problem is that the system can do that almost instantaneously. Call center agent can't do that any more than your bank teller can do that. Even if they know you for a 20-year relationship with a bank, walking into the bank, the teller still has no context to why you're there. I like to say it's sort of like Dory from Finding Nemo. Every new encounter is a new person to meet. So using AI and machine learning associated with that, and personalizing the experience just beyond even that data. A lot of people talk about personalization and segmentation and so forth. So if you put those two concepts together, there are three really: the data, the personalization, and the segmentation, and really tailor that experience. So you're not presenting prompts that are irrelevant to that segment, that you're using vernacular and words that are appropriate to that segment, and so forth. And the final thing here is natural language. If you've done any research in terms of natural language recognition, there's a lot of research going on and a lot of advancements in this particular area. The simple term, the way I'll describe this to you, just sort of, the basics, is that natural language gives you the ability to speak naturally and in fairly unstructured speech. Many, in fact, I'll say most IVRs, if they have natural language, often start that at the front with a sort of how may I help you kind of prompt, which you can then respond to, and then devolve into directed dialogue where there's a very set dictionary, grammars of things that the system is expecting. And so, say billing or say yes or no or those kind of things. Being able to use natural language throughout the entire conversation means that even when the system is asking for, let's say, a yes-no prompt, if you said, I didn't understand that, or could you repeat that, or could you go back, or no, that's not what I meant, the system can understand it beyond just the 20 ways of saying yes and the 30 ways of saying no. So natural language in a comprehensive way throughout the system is another best practice. I got three more of them, and then we'll go on from there. The conversational. What we find a lot of times in the design of systems is that the way it is phrased is not the way an agent would have that conversation. But then there's also simple things like, I love the IVRs that still say, listen carefully because our menu options have changed. If you still have that in your IVR, that's a very simple way to get a 0.5% improvement in CSAT because that point is irrelevant in this day and age. But more importantly, from a conversational perspective, in using a cadence that allows for reflective prompts and a continuation of the conversation. So, for example, if somebody says, I need my truck towed to Bob's Towing. That's using a natural language cadence, and it's very conversational and so forth. Instead of the system saying, did you say X, Y, and Z, the system should say something like, okay, I can help you with that tow. And if the system didn't get that right, it wasn't about a tow, it was about a boost or a jump or whatever, then the customer should be able to interrupt it at that point. It's a conversational kind of cadence, and it requires a very advanced IVR. The other thing for any of this to make any difference whatsoever is having the ability to have what's called an advanced ASR, automatic speech recognition, or frankly, the ability of the system to hear what you said. So a lot of what I've been talking about is the ability of the system to understand what you said. In other words, I heard it, but now do I know how to interpret it and use the business rules and so forth? The other piece is the ASR, which, frankly, in today's day and age, there's a big problem here still. A couple of data points, just so you know. One is that the biggest hang-up or issue with ASRs for any IVR is background noise. And so figuring out how to eliminate it, recognize noise patterns, even have the ability to say, I think I hear a TV on in the background type of thing. And in not too distant future, that will be common kind of interaction with the systems. The other piece of the ASR is that we have a limitation in the phone system in the U.S. You may have wondered why things like the Amazon Echo or using Siri on your phone seem to have so much better speech recognition than when you're having a conversation with an IVR. And the reason is because the infrastructure of the U.S. phone system is at 8 kilohertz. And your Siri is at 16 kilohertz. And what that means is the tops and the bottoms of what is being spoken gets sort of chopped off. And it's why you tend to enunciate and talk louder and things like that, because you think it will improve it. And in fact, it doesn't. What you want is the fidelity within inside that range to work. But anyway, so that will change when HD voice, HD phone becomes part of the U.S. standard. And then finally, from an ongoing tuning standpoint, what I would definitely say is the concept of set it and forget it is a not relevant or not realistic notion. This should be an ongoing sort of exercise inside your organization, constantly looking for not only the logic and business rules and tuning and whatnot, every aspect of what is being performed inside the system. If you think about what the call center of, say, 2050 is going to look like, you might not actually have a perception of what that is, but you probably know that there'll be a lot more automation and probably fewer bodies inside the call center. In fact, what I envision is that a lot of those bodies will be information workers who will be tuning the robots to be more efficient, and one of those robots, frankly, is the IVR. So those are the 6 high-level best practices that I wanted to talk to you about today. When you think about the call center, I alluded to some of these points already. Fewer people, and frankly, a lot of the simpler and easier stuff is going to be handled by robots, if you will. A more valuable call center agent will be the one that can actually say, I wonder why that call ended up in here, or can we teach the system to handle that? And making the call center overall more efficient by having the call center agents and the information workers really focused on improving the knowledge base, the capabilities, business rules, and so forth of the system. And the other points on here from a cost perspective, customer satisfaction and customer loyalty are probably ones that you've already factored in as you've built business cases in the past. So in summary, one of the things I want to point out is that as this paradigm shifts from having self-service handling simple items and having live agents handling the majority of things, that over time will change into an environment where more sophisticated IVRs are handling not only the simple calls, but middle tier ones. It doesn't make sense in my mind to have some of the complex ones handled by an IVR ever. And some examples would be things that require persuasion. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, persuasion will be something that machinery it's not the machine that can't do it, it's the human that won't accept it. Another is empathy or compassion. Probably not a good use of an IVR to do a first notice of loss on a life policy as an example. And So when you think about what shouldn't be in that complex piece at the moment and for a considerable amount of time, I think there are some relevant examples. But not only do you improve the economics of this whole thing, but you also improve the customer satisfaction because, frankly, customers choose the channel that they choose to interact with you based on which one they think is going to require the least amount of effort. And the reason people zero out of an IVR is because they view that that's going to take too much effort to get the task done. And even though they're going to a call center overseas and there's going to be a language barrier, that to them is a perception of less effort than what a horribly designed IVR might be. So with that, hopefully I'm roughly within my timeline. I want you to have a couple of takeaways, which is that poor self-service can have a negative impact on multiple areas of your contact center. Think about it in terms of that angry guy at the beginning. That guy is influencing your attrition, which, by the way, was the number one thing on that survey that I showed you on the first slide. So fixing even just your IVR has a way to build into your business model, your business cases around improving retention and CSAT scores. Implementing a best-of-breed IVR can address multiple of those top-line challenges that were part of that survey, and technology is going to enable us to achieve a lot of those. So with that, I thank you for the time, and Sherry, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom. And we're going to go on to our next presenter, Rick Marvels, Director of Professional Services for AVOKE Analytics. And Rick has over 10 years of experience working within the call center industry, helping companies achieve targeted cost reductions, meet the constantly changing regulatory requirements, and create new business policies to optimize agent performance. He works closely with customers to discover and improve their customer contact experiences through caller experience dashboards, analysis tools, and expert consulting. Rick?
Thank you, Sherry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time today. Well, we're just going to jump right in. First, what does an IVR do? Well, an IVR can serve up to three functions. One is to identify a caller. Two is to discern the caller's reason for calling and route them accordingly. And three is to offer self-service where applicable. And that's all an IVR can do. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, that's what it does. But when you think of an IVR, there's a flow behind it, whether it's natural language, directed dialogue, or DTMF. So here we have a very simple IVR in the blue, and all the purple is questions that your team may ask as you're building out your IVR. So really, the IVR flow is nothing more than just the tip of the iceberg, whereas asking questions like, is Barge-In on, universal opt-out, the no-play rule, do I have a DTMF fallback in speech, how many retries and how many do I give people, max errors, and application failures and network failures. And finally, what are the answers to all these questions outside of business hours if you're not a 24/7 shop? Let's get into some of the best practices. Well, first of all, you need to understand that best practices, IVR best practices, are not universal to all business types. But from the customer's perspective or point of view, they are. And what do I mean by that? Is that there's some practices that are unique to certain industries. For instance, if you're a natural gas company, you're going to have the first thing that says either say emergency or press 9 because you have a gas emergency. Well, you're not going to put that if you're a consumer electronics company or a banking emergency. But the thing is, customers don't just call your industry, they call everyone. So when you're comparing your IVR, you shouldn't just be comparing it to those in your industry. You need to compare them to everyone because your clients do. And they're comparing you to that consumer electronics company or to that financial institution. So just keep that in mind when you're designing your IVR, that not only looking at what your competition is doing, but what is the world doing as well. So let's look at some best practices. Here we've got one, when to allow Barge-In. If the caller wants to begin to respond to a prompt before it's finished, let them. I don't know how many times I've heard Barge-In turned off. But if you're going to turn off that Barge-In, at least communicate to the callers that they need to wait to the end of the message so that so they know that you're not expecting a response from them. Let's listen to a caller as he experiences the Barge-In issue.
say things like account balance, my power is out, or moving. How
My
may I help
power
you?
went out.
Sorry, I didn't get that. You can say things like account balance, my power is out, or moving. How may I help you?
My power is out.
Please hold while I transfer your call.
So here you had a very intelligent caller who understands that he can't barge into the IVR, but yet made noises. And in some places, if the barge-in wasn't turned off, that would have interrupted the IVR. Next, let's take a look at the next slide, there we go. Let customers skip to an agent. So allowing customers to skip out of the IVR to an agent is a good thing, generally, if you allow them to do it after they ID, because there's certain people who only want to speak to agents, but yet you need a little intelligence around them. And this option should be provided with the beginning menu. And also you should consider the zero out option. Now here I have two more calls lined up to play. It's the exact same IVR. One caller interacts with it with speech and one interacts with DTMF, yet their experiences are completely different.
I am an automated assistant. How may I help you?
Operator.
I understand you want to talk to a customer service representative. I may be able to help you.
Operator.
Say things like account balance, payment
Operator.
plan, or moving. How may I
Operator.
help you?
Operator.
Please hold while I transfer your call. I am an automated assistant. How may I help you? I understand you want to talk to a customer service representative. I may be able to help you. You can say things like account. Please hold while I transfer your call.
So here's the exact same IVR. One interacts with speech, but because the barge-in's turned off, continues to yell at the IVR, and granted he cooled off the last one, but he's ready to tell you customer representative very angrily. And the DTMF customer, well, they press zero, waited a little bit, and pressed zero again. I wonder which agent arrived more calm to the agent, or which caller arrived more calm to the agent. Here, though, you can see it's the exact same IVR, but the experience is completely different between the two. So things to consider when you're designing your IVR and what questions you're asking during that design. Also, are you maintaining the information flow? So information that you gather in the IVR should be passed down to the agents. Of course, this speeds up the process for both the agent and the caller and makes it more efficient. And customer perception of the experience is good if it is, but if it isn't, it degrades. And that's going to mean they're going to be repeating information, and that repeated information is going to show up when they're giving you your CSAT score or when they're doing a Net Promoter Score or a customer experience customer experience score. Let's listen to how this caller gives feedback to the agent about his experience with the IVR.
I got most of the way through this stupid automated system. It took the account number, recognized who I was, but it gives you like 2 seconds to come up with your routing number, and then it kicks you out of the system. I just want to pay this bill and be done with it.
Okay, I'm still looking for your account.
Wow,
Please.
interesting. Would you need any other information? Because I have
Sorry?
a star bill right in front of me. What else would you need?
No, that would be it.
Yeah, wow.
So here you're getting it right from the caller. I mean, he's not happy with his experience with the IVR or with the agent at this point. And yet it's not the agent's fault that the information didn't fall to him, but the agent's paying the price for that. Another thing is to allow your callers time. So you need to give the callers time to respond. At main menus, short amounts of time are good because, generically speaking, whether you're calling a consumer electronics company or your credit card company, the main menus are very similar, and so people are really familiar with them. But once you get down to that next menu, the sub-menus, you need to lengthen that time by a second because those are a little different in each experience. And also, I don't know how many times I've heard, as you've been hearing on these calls, that the caller's speaking or keying, and the IVR doesn't wait until they're done. It starts asking the next question. So the programming is speaking over, like it's pre-programmed to wait 10 seconds tops and then start going to the next menu. Or if you wait too long between your DTMF presses, it starts speaking again. Also, if you have a complicated business, you're going to need to give your callers extra time because they're going to have to think about the questions you're asking them rather than just reacting as in other IVRs. Also, you need to limit your wait time messages. For instance, here's your estimated wait time. It's 5 minutes. Well, I had this client where every 3.5 minutes after they entered the queue, they played this additional message of, your call is important to us. Please continue to hold. Well, the problem with that was that 50% of callers, once they heard that, even though they knew they had to wait 5 minutes, were hanging up. So now, not only have you taken your hit on your service level, because you're probably supposed to answer in 20 or 40 or 60 seconds, now you're taking a hit on your answer rates because you're just telling people your call is important to us, please continue to hold. Well, everyone, when they're on the calls and they're listening, is waiting for that break in either the music you're playing or the messaging they're giving them, and they expect that to be an answer. And when they don't get that agent, then they just hang up. So those are 5 of our opportunities. Next I'm going to show you is a checklist, and this one is very just generic, but it's a good thing to go through your IVR with. What are your opt-out options? What are your max retries set to? When an error occurs, when does it go to an agent? Barge-In, where is it set and how long is it set for? Queues, are they blind or transparent? Do you know the queue experience that you're putting your callers through? Is information being passed to your agents? What self-service applications are in your IVR, and what's their success rates? And finally, as Tom was saying, QA the IVR regularly, even when things appear smooth. Now, recommendations we have revolve around the IVRs need to be tuned up periodically. So whether you're a voice or DTMF system, voice systems need voice tuning, DTMF systems need question tuning. Regularly review and evaluate your IVR. Are callers hanging up in your IVR? Well, consider tweaking that small spot and redoing it. It's a pilot. Just roll it out in small places. See if things got better or worse. Testing. Have someone call production. Use a script, but you need a variety because those are good for testing. But then allow people to go off script because that'll shed new light into areas you may not be thinking of. And the best recommendation is to have someone who's not familiar with your system call in and try to QA your system. You'll get new ideas and fresh set of eyes. And finally, what's the benefit of end-to-end analytics? Well, you get the whole customer experience. You get automatic categorization and trending. You can jump right to the interesting calls, the ones that you're interested in, or you can even see the events within those calls, observe real customer behavior and their experience. As you've heard today, you can listen inside the IVR, as well as agents, partners, and all transfers associated to the call. So I thank you for your time today, and if you'd like to get a hold of us, this is how to get a hold of us. Sherry, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Rick. Lots of good tips there. So now we are going to come to our final presentation for today. Daniel Hung, Senior Director, Product Marketing Strategy for 24/7. And Daniel has a wealth of experience in the customer experience industry. He was previously with Ovum Research, where he led their global customer experience and interaction research and consulting practice, and was responsible for the direction of contact center, self-service, and customer experience research. He's authored many, many reports, benchmark studies, and articles, and has been featured in many publications. So now I'm going to turn this over to Daniel.
Thanks, Sherry, and hello, everyone. So what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit different. I just want to kind of take a step back and stretch your thinking and talk about elements of best practices and extending your IVR to make it digital in today's hyper-connected world. And this may be somewhat familiar, somewhat symbolic of what's going on in your boardrooms when you're whiteboarding of where IVR fits. So we all know companies today, more so than ever before, are constantly looking at how to optimize the customer journey with the right technology, with processes, and with people. And it makes sense because we, here in the U.S., it's really more about customer retention and making that to customer advocacy as opposed to customer acquisition. And on that backdrop, a lot of companies find themselves wondering what they should do with IVR. It's kind of become the faster stepchild. So, like, the question is, how should they fold IVR into today's digital world? Because a lot of things have changed in how customers engage with enterprises. So, first off, most phone calls hitting contact centers are coming from smartphones. I think 2016 is the inflection point, according to research firm Ovum, where most of the calls hitting contact centers, inbound calls for customer service, will come from smartphones. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense for the IVR to leverage at least some of the digital capabilities of the smartphone. The phone channel also has become the last resort for customers when they can't resolve their issue in other channels, when they can't do any self-service, or they can't figure out what to do via web or discussion boards, and just pick up the phone and call. And it's in these moments of truth when customer frustration runs high. We heard some of the recordings from Rick, and sure enough, that customer probably tried something in another channel before picking up the phone. And it's in these moments of truth when that frustration is high is when companies need to think strategically how to prevent the frustration and possible customer churn. And therefore, they should be focusing on how IVR can go with the grain, how it can go together with other channels to improve the overall CSAT, NPS, and the customer experience. And thus, it makes a lot of sense for the IVR to have context so the customer doesn't have to start over when using the phone channel. The IVR should remember what the customer did thus far in his or her journey, even if they traverse across different channels, like if they started on the web or mobile app before picking up the phone and calling. So that context should still be there. And the IVR has to also be a fundamental part of what we're all calling omnichannel. And that's, for the most part, the industry kind of defines that as ability to preserve context across a myriad of channels during a customer's journey. And finally, just having context, I think in this day and age is not enough. It makes a lot of sense for the IVR to really know what the customer is trying to do, to understand their intent, and provide the best treatment based on that. So it should know the customer and provide a personalized engagement towards that. And I believe Tom covered that, touched on that in his slides. So addressing all those 5 areas is where IVR fits strategically today and how it can be relevant in today's digital world. So I want to talk about three practices that you should be thinking about in making IVR digital and more effective in self-service resolution and customer experience metrics. And the first is to make IVR web aware. And what I mean by that is if a customer starts their journey on a website, the IVR should know what the customer was doing on the website, which may have, in fact, triggered that call in the first place. And also what I mean by making IVR web aware is the ability to know if the customer is currently engaged on the website at that very moment when they're calling. And I like to call this dual channeling because the customer is hitting you up on 2 channels concurrently, simultaneously. And there may be a 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of experience of what it is that you can do. So here there's 2 use cases. Number one, the ability to preserve context, context being what the customer did on the website, and presence. And presence is understanding and knowing that the customer is on the website while calling. And based on that, you provide the best treatment for the customer through their preferred channel. Now, having these 2 capabilities makes a lot of sense today because, after all, 64% of customers start their customer service journeys on the website. And interestingly enough, 63% of customers are, in fact, on the website or a mobile app when they're calling customer service. And I think that's a very interesting stat. 63% are dual channeling when they are making that call. And in this use case, customers start on the web and then they make the call while still on the website. And the IVR knows the customer is still on the website, and then it comes to the decision that the best treatment for the customer is to push a visual experience out into the device he or she is accessing the website through. And this can be a widget or a virtual agent. So in this example, a customer's credit card is not working. And so they log onto the website to kind of figure out why it is that it's not working. They log in, and when the customer does, it says, please call. And because of business rules or some other reason, there needs to be multi-factor authentication here. So they need to go ahead and make a phone call. So the user calls the 1-800 number listed there on the website, and the IVR says, I see that you are calling about some charges on current bill. Customer says yes, and the IVR says, it looks like you're currently on our website. Would you like to review your charges on the website? So the IVR at that moment knows through that presence capability that the customer is on that website right then, and it comes to a decision based off the fact that they are on the website, and it is a bigger screen, and it's probably a better graphical, better experience for them to see graphics, and then to look at the charges that way, and that's just a better treatment for that customer. So the customer says yes, agrees to that, and then the IVR says, okay, go ahead and navigate back to the website. Already open in your browser, a review charges window will pop up. So at that point, the phone call will drop, and now the widget comes up, and now the customer is, via self-service, able to actually go ahead and review the charges and to see the charges. And here they could go through some. One may not look familiar. They click on that. They're able to double-click. Oh, yes, I did actually buy food at 360 Gourmet Burrito, and they go ahead and confirm all charges. And the hold is released off the card, and now the customer can go ahead and continue with using the card. So that's an example of a self-service journey where you're using the website in conjunction with the IVR, but the IVR has a very unique capability, sensing capabilities, understands the customers on the website, and deems that's a better treatment to serve the customer on the website. So another capability of a web-aware IVR is that the IVR knows what the customer is doing on the website when they're calling. So in this case, the customer doesn't actually have to be simultaneously on the website, and the customer can be calling at a later time. But the IVR preserves context from whatever the customer was doing on the website interaction, and then it identifies and predicts why the customer is calling, and it provides personalized treatment. But this is, in fact, live. I don't know how many of you guys fly United Airlines, but you may have experienced this. While you're on the website, you may have tried to book a ticket, but for whatever reason, it says, please call. And when you do make a call, perhaps the dates of travel aren't available. When you hit the IVR, pick up the phone and call. It says, thanks for calling United.com support. Welcome back, Daniel. So it's very personalized. It recognizes that it's me, Daniel, who's in fact calling. That's through any detection. And then it goes on to say, I see you were recently on United.com. So it's informing me as the customer that, hey, we know that you're on the website. We know what you were trying to do there. You tried to book flights from San Francisco to Mahi Island. And because of that, they want me to go ahead and talk to an agent so I can go ahead and book that trip. They can protect that revenue in that way. So the decision is, would you like to speak to an agent about that trip? That's the best treatment. And there, I would say yes. And okay, the IVR would say, okay, please hold while I transfer you to an agent and assist you. And all the context from this interaction, all the dates of travel, the destinations, and your own personal information is all passed over to the agent. Now, in this deployment, it's pretty clear the benefits that agent handle time decreases because they have all the information already about the customer and understands what the customer needs to do. The IVR time decreases as well. There's no blind call to an IVR. You don't have to re-qualify yourself, re-authenticate yourself. The IVR already qualified why it is that it's calling. The 85% of proactive offers accepted, that's essentially the customer saying, yes, the IVR knows why it is that I'm calling. I'm saying yes to everything. They got it right, and I'd like to go ahead and talk to the agent. And obviously, there's some CSAT improvement based off of that because it's just a personalized engagement and saves the customer time. Now, the second best practice is essentially to give visual capabilities to the IVR. So remember when I talked about how you can make IVR work in conjunction and leverage some of the smartphone capabilities? Well, that's here in this best practice. And it's not just about making it visual, but going beyond that to have multimodal capabilities so the customer can see, type, and touch, and their interactions make complex and information-rich interactions very fast and easy. So typically today when a customer calls, most of the IVRs for very large enterprises are speech-enabled. So they're going to hit a speech-enabled IVR, and they may conduct a transaction that way or route to an agent. But we're saying you could go beyond that and to add that multimodal and visual capabilities so the customer has a lot more dimensionality and more of an immersive experience. And let's see how it looks. So in this particular journey, it's charge verification. Some of you may have experienced this, but when when customers get fraud alerts, they may get a phone call where you listen to the past 5 transactions, and that was just a really bad experience because you have to kind of remember all 5. And the company that has deployed this with us has said that was a very poor experience. We want to make it just a lot more immersive and really leverage digital to do that. So let me kind of talk you through the journey here. You get an outbound phone call, and it asks you, instead of would you like to hear the past 5 transactions, would you like to see the 5 past transactions? An SMS is sent, and you're able to click on that link, and now you're able to see the 5 charges. One may look suspicious to you. You can double-click on that, and then it gives you more details about that charge, where it was made, what time it was made, and it jogs your memory. Oh, yeah, I did go to 360 Gourmet Burrito at that time, and I purchased food. And you can go ahead and confirm all charges. And that is essentially kind of the example of the journey of what we've done with global financial services leaders. In this deployment, there are just immediate impacts to the business, aside from the cost savings of $12 million per year. I think it's very important to note that 86% of the smartphone users accepted that multimodal invitation. So this company just turned it on. They didn't even advertise it. So it's very intuitive for the customers. There are no apps that had to be downloaded, and it's really a bridging or coming together of a phone call and a mobile web experience. And they were using this to help change customer behavior by promoting the mobile channel and acquainting IVR callers with a native mobile app. The journey was very successful, 92% success rate, and 87% of the customers rated it with 4 or 5 stars. So it's very well accepted amongst the customers. Now, the third best practice is about leveraging the same natural language technology. I know both Rick and Tom talked about natural language. Now, natural language within IVR has been there for quite some time. And natural language, essentially the ability to understand statistically and semantically what the customer is saying or typing across a string of words, a string of utterances, that has typically been in its own channel silo. So while there's natural language in IVR, there's still also natural language in virtual agents or intelligent assistant, whatever you call it in your organization. And this is kind of, you have to manage it in its own silo. There's dual effort, and you can't leverage one natural language with the other. But if you are looking to future-proof and to make natural language really kind of universal across your organization and the touch points, it is possible to have that one intent model shared across like IVR and virtual agents. And this is where there's shared application logic and the ability through natural language to understand what the customer is saying or typing and then acting on that, offering the best channel treatment, whether it is to get that customer service them right there in that VA, in the virtual agent, or in that IVR. Or if it requires a channel shift where the customer moves from the IVR to a chat agent or a virtual agent, move them over to an agent-assisted chat experience. So there's a lot of ways of connecting the dots of what will be the best treatment based off of the natural language that spans both. So I'll kind of dig down into that a little bit deeper. But first, I just want to say that we deployed in this deployment with a major financial service provider. They use a single natural language that spans both virtual agent and IVR. So notice the customer interaction with the virtual agent. So the figure to the right is just a magnified version of the virtual agent window to the left. So I don't want you squinting your eyes there. And you don't have to read through all this. It's essentially an interaction where the customer asks about his credit score. And the natural language through the virtual agent is able to pick up and understand that what the customer meant by them typing it. And it's being used in the question, why hasn't it changed in 3 months? And she's actually referring that to his credit score. That's what it is. In the same example, when you pick up the phone and call, and you're learning more about your credit score, and you ask the same question, you'll get the same response. So many times there's a lot of inconsistency in channels. And by having one single natural language that spans different channels, you're able to provide consistent answers to the questions. You're able to provide a more in-depth understand what the customer is meaning if they say it. So it's just a better, more natural conversation dialogue. But also, it's also important to say, it also feeds into each other. So like everything that's been typed in that virtual agent as well as what's been said in natural language, when we're talking about tuning and optimization, it all comes from the same corpus. So you get better economies of scale in that way, and you don't need as large a team to actually manage the natural language. You get cost savings from that economies of scale, and you get the better CSAT and customer experience, and you're able to future-proof natural language investments across touch points. So just to quickly recap, in today's day and age, when you're just thinking of single channel, there is a lot you can still do with IVR, but folding IVR into the digital realm with your other channels is really where best practices are starting to really solidify. So we're all about saying, give your IVR digital roots and capabilities, make the IVR web aware. Once again, being able to preserve context from whatever it is that they're doing on the website, apply that to the IVR when they make that phone call. Or if they're calling you while they're on the website, there's something unique and different that you can do a better experience. You can also leverage the capability of the smartphone, having visual and multimodal experiences on that smartphone, and really leverage the digital capabilities of that smartphone. And finally, future-proof. Natural language just shouldn't really reside in one channel. It should really not be looked at strategically as it spans the world of omni-channel and has different touch points. So from that, you're really able to improve the customer experience, shorten the customer journey for the customer, and of course, save them time. And with that, I'd like to thank you so much for your time, and I hand this over to Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. While your mic is open, does this work with an associated login only?
In which instance? I guess it will be for the answer is yes and no. But it depends on if we have your annual detection, and there can be predictions of where it is you as a customer. But for the most part, yes, you would probably want to be logged into the website, and then when you make a phone call, we could correlate the two different your accounts to say, oh, it is indeed Sherry. She's on the website while she's making a phone call.
Okay, thank you. And so we are going to go to the questions that came in, and you can please feel free to add those questions that have already been submitted. Using an IVR, is there any statistics on savings, if there's loss of customer, if you've had a bad experience with your IVR? Does anybody want to tackle that? I'm just going to unmute all of our panelists. So would someone like to respond to that? Any statistics that you know of if somebody will switch a company because they're just so frustrated with the IVR?
We did run a survey of 3,000 consumer respondents, and we found that, this is kind of an interesting stat, 37% in the U.S. Have decided to end their business with, and their relationship with the business because of a poor experience with the IVR. But that's a bit misleading. We asked them first, have you ended a relationship with a business due to poor customer service? Those that said yes, we kind of delved down deeper into as to why. And 37% of customers because of IVR frustration, and that's the number one answer given.
Okay, thanks. Tom, with artificial intelligence, how do they handle accents or language barriers? Can they continuously be refined and redeveloped over time?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it, which is one is the language and the second is accents, although I'll put even the accents in the bucket of background noise and other things that cause speech recognition to be difficult. But tuning a system to be aware or competent in accents is a quite laborious job. And so one of the things that's a great asset is that if your tuning exercise is done in such a way that it's for the entire application or the entire, if all of your recognition is going through one brain or processor at the same time, then fixing any kind of tomato or more egregious kind of accent issues, you do it in one place. Versus, as you may recall from my discussion around directed dialogue, if you're doing it for specific grammars, for specific places, for specific apps, that's a never-ending exercise. And so I think there are ways to do that more efficiently. I think we've got some good answers to that. As far as language is concerned, that's a much more difficult nut to crack because you then have the compounding of accents in different languages and being able to deploy systems in different languages. The last thing I'll say is, though, to keep in mind that if you're deploying an application in multiple languages, it really is a redeployment because not only is the way the system is hearing what you said, but also consumers in different regions of the world interact with the system in different ways, and often, frankly, there's different business rules associated with that as well.
Okay, great. Let's see. What kind of shift is expected in customer experience and Net Promoter Scores when simple tasks are managed by an IVR rather than a live agent?
Let me take a quick crack at that first, and then I'll turn it over to Daniel and Rick. One thing that I think is important to understand is that there has been an evolution from the classic CSAT score to Net Promoter Score, which is, CSAT is doing a broad survey. Net Promoter is asking fundamentally, would you recommend us to friends and family? To the following evolution to what is called customer effort score. And so when it comes to self-service, and particularly in something like an IVR, asking the question, was it easy, is a great way to sort of normalize the difference between the experience inside the IVR and the experience with a live agent. Remember what I was saying earlier, which is customers choose the channel that they choose based on which one they think is going to require the least amount of effort to get the task done. So I think from a CE, Net Promoter Score, and so forth, you measure it the same way as you always have. You just would measure specifically questions around the IVR and questions around the agent and compare the two. But I think adding effort to that, not just NPS, is an important component.
Okay, thank you. Daniel, do you have something that you can add to that?
Sure. Just a couple things. I think there are stats out there, and I think it's pretty straightforward. It's not rocket science. The customers want to self-service. They want to self-serve. And when they're picking up the phone and calling, most of them are probably calling to resolve a complex issue because they can't get done what it is that they need to get done on other channels. So given that, I think that it's really figuring out if you're a customer on their journey, if there's some partial automation that can be done with the IVR, certain tasks that can be completed and then routed out to a live agent, or based off of what it is that they did in their journey and what it is they need to get done, if you can actually keep them in self-service and have an application designed well enough to keep them engaged without them being frustrated and empowering them with the right capabilities. I think that's really key for to impact the overall customer experience in NPS, because there is a lot of task completion rates. There's a lot of different ways of skinning the cat in terms of IVR performance. But when you're looking at the customer experience in NPS, a lot of that times isn't just like one-off interactions. A lot of them are a collection of different interactions that must have with the enterprise.
Okay, thank you. Rick, how does analyzing a caller's interaction in the IVR help to understand the overall customer experience?
Yeah, being able to understand how they actually started their interaction with you enables you to at least set the precedent before they get to the agent. So really, the voice of your the voice of your company, as many call center managers and directors tell their staff, is the agents, but it's not. It's really the IVR. And so hearing what that voice is and being able to demonstrate that voice to your agents before they so that they can understand the customer journey to them really helps them empathize and connect with those callers. And that will then increase your CSAT scores as well as your Net Promoter scores and effort scores.
Okay, thank you. But we have a lot of questions coming in. We will not be able to get to all of your questions, but what we will do is take a transcript of the questions, forward them over to all of our presenters, and they'll get back to any questions we couldn't get to today. Okay, I'm gonna survey the panel. Just yes or no. Are you seeing significant trends in the younger population preferring IVR or self-service versus a live agent? Tom, yes or no?
Not significant, although I'll give you the standard consultant's answers. It depends.
Okay, Daniel, does it depend?
Yes. We did this survey, and millennials, that generation, want self-service more so than other generations, but only by a few percentage points.
Okay, Rick?
I agree. They're trending to more, but not significantly, and it also depends upon the industry you're surveying.
Okay, good point. Let's see. What way would you integrate the IVR with a customer-facing culture of support? The first line of support are agents, and it may be difficult to have this embraced if your staff is not supportive.
I think one of the things that's important to understand is that consumers want choice. And so if you have a mindset that we want our customers to talk to our people and our customers, want to talk to our agents, whatever, and that there's mutual consent around that, that's fine, but it's rarely the case where it's every caller wants to talk to your agents. And so giving the caller or your customers choice is probably more important than a culture of we only want them to talk to our agents. Now, if the call type is such that it has to go to a human first before anything can happen, such as a regulatory insurance or things like that, that's a slightly different issue, and there's that gets a more complicated discussion.
Okay, and again, everybody will get those questions, so if you'd like to have that complicated discussion, all of the panelists are happy to have that with you. Let's take one more question, and then I'm going to ask you each for 30 seconds to wrap up with what you'd like everyone to remember. So we are moving to a visual IVR experience. Would adapting a web-aware IVR hinder that experience? So if they try to self-serve on the web, would we be able to correlate that and offer the visual IVR as well, or opt them out to a rep since they have already tried to self-serve? Daniel, real quick answer for that?
Yeah. It depends, right? I mean, like if they are concurrent, if they are engaged on the website while calling and you know that they are on the website, you probably want to keep them on the website. It's a better screen experience. But if you have the context from their website transaction and they're calling at a different time where they're not on the website, then you can render a visual IVR experience at that point. So it depends. And And that's not to say you could do dual screening for more immersive and different types of interactions as well. So biometrics capture. So it, once again, it depends on the journey and the business.
Okay, great. Okay, Tom, 30 seconds. What would you like everyone to remember? What's the most important thing you'd like to leave them with?
I think that it's important to understand that people don't like IVRs, not because they don't like IVRs, but because they often don't work. And so taking the advice of myself, Daniel, and Rick today, I think will help. I also think it's important to understand that there's a resurgence in terms of voice self-service, and the notion in the 90s and early 2000s that voice was going to be dead may come true eventually, but it's not that there's a finite galaxy, but rather that the galaxy is expanding. And so not only do you have all of these different self-service channels and agents and so forth, but IVR, good IVR, is going to be a channel that people are going to continue to use for a very long time.
Rick?
Well, I think it's important to remember that things are just kind of cyclical. It used to be that your agents in the call centers were almost your highest paid agents, and then they went to being your least paid agents because of how calls got routed through the IVR. But now you're asking them to do more again, and their salaries are rising. So remember that you're competing with these agents, these really good agents, with your competition outside of just your industry. And so you want your IVR to be world-class so that everyone takes a look at you and says, that's how I want mine to be.
And Daniel?
Yeah, take a step back and look at the entire customer journey and how IVR and the phone channel fit into that. And then understand that you can be a lot more creative. It's not just about one channel and servicing that customer in one channel. You could have a lot more different experiences. You can integrate IVR and really make it digital to really kind of improve that customer interaction and experience.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our presenters and to 24/7, Smart Action, and AVOKE Analytics for bringing these great ideas to the Serum Exchange audience. You can expect to receive in your email a link to the recording, and also on that link will be a PDF to the slides in about 24 hours or so. It may be a little later than that, but right around there we will send that to you. Again, remember to complete the survey. Let us know what you thought of these presentations. We really like to hear from the audience. And thank you, and let's give a big virtual applause to our wonderful panel. And at this point, we did go a little over. If we did not get to your questions, we'll forward those on. Thank you for sending those great questions in. And, gentlemen, we're getting lots of virtual claps, which is great. So thank you all for attending. We will be ending this session at this point. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.